Let the rain on your window become the small, steady drum you carry into the evening. Draw your shoulders down. Breathe slowly, as if you are untying a ribbon long knotted at the throat. The town beyond has folded itself into the soft, damp hush of pre-dawn. Lamps in upstairs rooms glow like distant moons. A kettle somewhere 2 streets over has begun to whisper. Tonight, if you will, we step quietly through a brass-handled door into a place that keeps little things the world forgets. A place whose shelves are arranged like constellations. It is called the Library of the Stars. Lily unlocks it before the sun has learned the shape of the roofs. She knows the exact weight of the key in her palm. Warm from the brass, thin at the first cooling. How it catches the light of the street lamp, and then the darker glow above the library's own doorway. The door opens with a familiar small sigh, a letting out of night and a welcoming in of soft domestic sounds. Rain running in silver threads along the mullioned window, the distant rumble of a bus, the occasional chime of a far-off shop bell. Inside, the air smells of old paper and waxed wood, of a faint, comforting sweetness that is not quite sugar and not quite the dust of long-turned pages. Something like memory given form. She goes, as she always does, to the little alcove where the kettle lives. A small, chipped copper thing on a low hob reserved for quiet hours. The kettle clicks and sighs, a careful, patient sound that fits the rhythm of her hands as she sets 2 ceramic mugs on a tray, each with a thin ring of ware at its lip. A cat, a white cat with 1 tawny ear, purrs and curls its body around a stack of returned paperbacks, making them into a gentle hill. Lily's slippers make no sound on the rugs. Even the rugs seem to know this is a time for softness. Before she lights the lamp in the main room, she pauses, right there in the doorway, to turn the strings of tiny lights that hang above the shelves. They are the sort that look like a scattering of small stars, warm, incandescent beads that turn the spines to gold and soft shadow. For a moment, the whole library is an inverted sky. The stacks become low constellations, and the reading chairs are islands. Outside, the rain keeps time. Let your shoulders soften. Allow your breath to slow. Imagine the lights in the stacks like coordinates, each one naming a book with its own small, private history. The first book she pulls tonight is not really a book at all. It is a folio, stitched in faded blue cloth, the title on its spine long rubbed away. When Lily opens it, the margins are alive. Names written in tiny slanted hands, recipes folded into star charts, a pressed sprig of lavender between a page of star names, and a shopping list that ends with the word toffee. How simple it is, how ordinary. Someone, once, tucked a recipe for a pumpkin tart into a map of Cassiopeia, and thought little of it, as if the sweetness of their winter ought to live beside the stars that watched over their nights. She reads the annotations aloud, not in any loud way, but in that soft, low voice one uses with sleeping things. The ink has feathered where water once kissed it. A smear across the edge translates 2 pinches of nutmeg into a blot that looks like a little cloud. The folio is a palimpsest of ordinary life. A notation in the corner about a child's birth, a hand-drawn star with the arrow see page 42, and then, underneath, in a different hand, sift flour twice. The collision of unfamiliar handwriting makes her smile. There is a comfort in these cross-purposes. People who mapped the heavens and people who measured teaspoons had the same hands, believed in the same small certainties. She sets the tray on her knee and sips. The tea is tart at first, then familiar, like a thing you have loved for years and suddenly remember. Beside her, on a short, round table, a neat stack of returned books waits for the morning's slow ritual. The gentle tapping of spines, the smoothing of covers, the attentive thumb across the four edges to coax pages into order. Outside, a delivery scooter slips by, its tires whispering on the wet road. Inside, the lamp clicks on. One soft sound, the heater's low murmur, the page turned in the folio. A footfall at the main door announces Seamus, steady as the tides. He is always a confidence of calm in this hour. A shawl wrapped about his shoulders, an umbrella dripping like a slow, patient fountain, a paper bag in his hand. He has a fondness for the maps, for the folios that speak of the sky and the weather, and an even deeper fondness for the tea. He moves with the careful deliberation of a man who has hummed the same tune all his life and knows exactly where each note falls. "Lily," he says, with the kind of small, affectionate modulation that is almost a whisper. He sets down the umbrella and, by habit, wipes the handle on the mat before setting it into the stand. Their exchange is brief, efficient, a practice that holds up the shape of morning like the ribs of an umbrella. He opens his bag and, with a careful flourish that feels formal in the most private way, presents her with a small envelope. Inside is a bookmark, thin card, a smear of an old painting printed along its edge, the corner frayed. "Thought you might like this," he says, and his eyes crinkle as though to soften the sentence into the same warm cloth as the rest of the room. Sometimes the Library of the Stars receives gifts that feel like apologies to the shelves, things left behind that the building itself knows how to hold. Seamus's bookmark looks like a comet caught in paper. Lily slides it between 2 pages of the folio and says, "It'll do well there," and the words settle like a light on the spine, an acknowledgement that a thing will have a place. There is a small snag in the folio that gives the first vignette its quiet trouble. A page near the middle has been creased, and the ink smear there is thicker, as if a tear has tried to make itself a letter. She sets both palms on the page, feeling the texture under her fingers, the difference between a page that yields and a page that threatens to fall. She has the tools for this sort of careful repair: a blind-stitched strip of Japanese tissue, the smallest brush that belongs to the conservator's kit, a tin of wheat paste kept in an old jam jar that has belonged to the library for longer than any of the current staff. She works slowly, the way one tends a small fire, laying tissue over the crack, pressing it down with a bone folder until the page sits like a mended wing. The repair is not the sort of thing people notice unless they know what to look for, but Seamus notices, as do most of the regulars who have been taught by habit to see the library as something alive. He watches and says nothing, listening to the soft breath of glue drying, to the kettle huffing, to the rain that seems to think itself a composition of small symbols. When Lily finishes, she exhaled a sound that could have been a laugh or a long relieved note. She slips the bookmark into the folio so its edge peeps out like a little lighthouse. They drink tea. They exchange the quiet news of the town in tiny fragments. A new lamp by the bakery, a child's lost glove found in the park, a postcard from someone who moved away last spring and sent a line that read only, "We think of the light." There is no hurry to any of their sentences. Each one is shaped by the knowing that there is time. If you are listening, let your jaw loosen. Release any small tensions you might be carrying. Imagine the warmth of the mug at your palms, the subtle steam that carries a candlelight of scent. bergamot, a hint of chamomile, and let the breath follow that steam down and out. Before Lily leaves the alcove, she folds a small scrap of paper and slips it into her coat pocket. A note to herself that reads simply, "Ask Rose about the sleeves." There are places in old books where protective covers are more necessary than charm, and there are people like Rose who will bring sewn sleeves and ribbon fastenings and the right sort of sticky tape that does not yellow with time. There are always small alliances in a library, networks of hands that say quietly, "This one needs a hand." When Seamus finally goes, he leaves the umbrella on its stand, its handle dripping slow beads onto the mat like a clock. He takes the folio, asking if he might bring in an old star atlas he keeps in his attic, the sort with fold-out plates and sketches in the margins. It might enjoy some company, he says. Lily says yes. He tips his hat as though the hat itself were the library's bell, and then he closes the door behind him. The click, a small punctuation that tells the room what time it is. There is a hush then, a settled interval where a single page turned twice sounds rich as a shout. Lily walks the stacks with a lamp in her hand, keeping the light close so the shadows remain companionable rather than sharp. She notices small things that are their own quiet revelations. A child's handwriting on a spine label, the way a particular bookmark always ends up in the same book, the way the cat moves from a chair to a stack as though it were a small migration. She runs a hand along a shelf and finds an inscription written in a pale, patient hand. For M, who liked looking up at the stars. Someone once put that book down, and the book kept the sentence like a promise. In the far west corner of the library there is a reading table that looks out of a low window onto the lane. Tonight, the glass is beaded with rain that has created 1,000 tiny rivers running down, each one catching the lights of the room and throwing them back like the flash of a small constellation. On the table, a child has left a half-made paper star, folds precise and slightly uneven, and beside it a pencil with 2 nibbled corners. Small things sit together in a way the world outside seldom allows. Discarded gloves next to a book with pressed leaves, a tiny jam jar of glue beside an edited typescript. It feels like a domestic map made of the town's ordinary belongings. Lily moves the paper star into a box labeled Community Craft, and tucks a scrap of blue tissue between it and a stack of paper birds, so nothing rubs raw against anything else. These ministrations take time, and time is the currency of the library. She makes a note on a small card. Star, left at table, add to display. The handwriting is neat, a looped script that will be understood by the volunteers. Outside the lane, the weather turns. The rain thins and then thickens again. A hush of wind moves through the sycamores. With the change comes the knowledge that someone else will soon step into the doorway, breath quickened from the street, cheeks flushed from being out in it. The Library of the Stars is a public home, a place where people deposit their small domestic dramas and find them turned into manageable things, attuned and honored. Before we go further, a quiet note. If this evening in the Library of the Stars feels like a comfort you might return to, consider staying subscribed for more evenings such as this. It is a soft invitation, no more than that, and leaving it small keeps the hush. After Seamus leaves and the kettle cools to a patient, watery breath, Lily begins to prepare for the day ahead, in the particular way small public houses do when they want to feel private. She arranges the chairs in the reading room so that the light falls just so. She tests a lamp, noticing that one bulb seizes up and needs a gentle nudge to resume its hum. She checks the calendar by the door. Story hour for children at 3, a binder's workshop on Saturday, the craft circle on Thursday afternoon. Names sit in neat columns and next to some an asterisk. Bring sleeves, bring paste, projector cables. The library, like any household, keeps lists. It is then that the first real breath of wind brings more than the usual rain. The street outside fills with a kind of bustle. A cyclist's bell, the muffled sound of hurried footsteps, someone calling a child's name in the way parents do before the autumn really descends. Lily pulls her cardigan tighter and moves out to the door, where through the glass she sees the shape of Rose arriving. Rose appears with her cheeks flushed and a parcel under her arm wrapped in brown paper, tied with string, and a small sprig of rosemary stuck beneath the knot. Rose has hands that remember how to make things tidy, how to lace up a binding, how to sew a pocket into a cover, how to fold sugar paper into shapes that make a display look like a celebration. She brings, tonight, protective sleeves, each one cut to the sizes they will need and labeled with the kindness of practical people. "I thought we might see to those folios," Rose says, and when she steps inside the library, she shakes water from her hair and breathes like a person who has been working outside and is delighted to be saved by warmth. Together they sit at the repair table, a broad expanse of worktop scarred with the marks of many hands. On its surface are tools that are as much a part of the library as any book. Bone folders, a palette of small brushes, a spool of linen thread, tins of small brass corners that clip to a beloved book's edge. Lily lays the folio open again, and Rose smooths the new sleeves into place like putting a child's coat over their shoulders. The two of them work in a kind of choreography that comes from years of practice, hands that know without words where to be. While they work, a pair of twins arrives, small stormbirds who always come in with cheeks bright and pockets full of things they mean to show Lily. Tonight they have pressed leaves, deep russet and a green with the mottled edge of advanced season. They want to know which book those leaves might like best. Lily suggests one with a seam of poetry in which winter is personified in a way that makes the children murmur. She lets them leave the leaves between the pages, and they tuck them there like secret messages. The twins run their small fingers along the margins and find the marginalia, someone's note from long ago about the taste of late apples, and make a small, satisfied sound. This is the second vignette beginning, the one that will be about seed catalogs and drying pages, about the blustery day, and the way small things come inside for protection. Lily pulls a carton from beneath the table. It contains a set of pamphlets, their covers browned and soft. These are family seed lists, the kind of domestic wisdom handed down from gardener to gardener. Varieties noted in the steady hand of someone who knew when to prune and when to fold in the earth. To the town, they were once the sort of thing kept in a kitchen. Now they live in the library, because a kitchen can forget and a library remembers. She opens one pamphlet, and a tiny cloud of dust lifts up, catching in the lamplight like a scatter of very small constellations. The first page bears a name. E. Marlowe, 1966. The notes are practical and full of care. Late blooms, shade for the lettuce, plant runner beans with willow stakes. There are pressed petals between the pages, thin as gauze, and when Lily lifts them, the scent is faint and wholly transportive. Damp earth, the resin of cut stems. She lays out the pamphlets across the table and begins to sort them. Varietal lists together, aerials like maps together, anecdotal notes together. Each pamphlet tells a tiny story of where the town's gardens once were, and where they might be again. A problem arises, small and slow. When she tries to open one of the larger pamphlets, a brittle staple gives under her thumb, and a whole corner threatens to come away. The staple has rusted, leaving a brown halo that bleeds into the page. It is a familiar hazard. Metal that corrodes, paper that splits. There are methods for extracting rusted staples without tearing the paper. There are methods for hinging the torn corners back together, for flattening the paper under blotting cloth. It is all slow, domestic alchemy. Lily goes to fetch the desk lamp where Rose keeps their strongest hands, and in doing so notices, across the aisle, a little display they have made to celebrate the season. Bookmarks, colored like autumn leaves, some with short typed notes that read like recipes, others with poems about frost. While Lily is bent over her toolkit, the door opens once more with a gust of wind carrying the sound of a bicycle bell, and the hint of roasted chestnuts from a market stall. A gentleman, middle-aged, with a face that the light makes gently carved, stands hesitating in the threshold with a coat that has been torn at the elbow by a stray branch. He looks at the table, and then at Lily, and says in a low voice, "I wondered if you might help me with this pamphlet. It belonged to my mother." He bears it like a relic, folded and soft as tissue. There is kindness in the request. Lily takes the pamphlet with both hands and feels the faint, familiar pulse. The imprint of someone else's fingers, a note tucked between the pages saying, "For the best sewing." She looks at the gentleman and nods. He introduces himself. "Bennick," he says, and when he smiles, it is like a candle opening. He leaves his coat in the stand and sits. The library makes space for small griefs the same way a kitchen will set a pot on the stove when a recipe needs a long simmer. Lily examines his pamphlet. The staples here have gone entirely. A cluster of pages needs binding, but the spine has been weakened. It will need a careful re-sewing, a lining applied, perhaps a new spine label. She makes a plan out loud in the way one sometimes does to order their own thoughts. The pamphlet will need to be kept flat tonight under blotting paper, a light pressure. Tomorrow she might call on the volunteer binder to see if she can lend time. Bernice listens with gratitude that makes his voice small. Outside, the wind moves a loose sign until it bangs on its hinge, and then is still. The rain has grown fine enough to be mere punctuation again. Quietly, Rose reaches into her parcel and hands Lily a length of linen tape. "For the pamphlet," she says. "If you want to hinge it with a guard first, the pages will take less stress." The tape is the color of unbleached flour. It is the sort of small kindness that carries with it an entire 6 weeks' worth of practical care, and Lily takes it like a lifeline. As they begin the careful business of creating a guard, a strip of tape folded to form a supple hinge, children drift in behind the pair, eyes wide at the prospect of the making table and the pile of colored glassine paper for the craft session. Their bright voices are a soft undercurrent, like the patter of a small brook, interesting but not loud enough to break the room. The twins bring the leaves they pressed earlier to leave with the seed pamphlet. Lily tapes a small envelope to the inside cover with a note in which she writes the name Bennick and the date. She writes with a hand that is calm and sure, the way someone who has done this for many years might be. They will not finish the pamphlet's binding today, partly because good binding needs hours of drying and waiting, partly because other quiet things call. There is always the necessity of allowing glue to set on its own time. So there is a a moment in which the work is intentionally suspended. In that pause, something happens that changes the mood of the morning with a small, bright note. Lily hears a sound like a whisper behind a shelf, a sound she knows well enough by now. The black cat, the library's long-haired resident, sleek and dignified, stretches out from between the biographies and pads along, a small velvet-footed escort. Upon its back, incidentally balanced, is a folded scrap of paper. The cat drops the paper at Lily's feet and mews as though to say, "We have a message." Lily picks up the scrap. It is a note, folded several times, the edges softened by being in someone's pocket. It reads in a hurried, slightly blotted hand. Found. An old box in the church loft. Strange charts. Could be of interest. M. There is something in that line, a word, strange, that could mean anything depending on the taste of the teller. Strange might mean unusual, might mean worth a closer look, might simply be the remit of someone's curiosity. Lily tucks the scrap into her pocket alongside the note about sleeves, and feels a small, familiar thrill. The Library of the Stars has always been a place that answers invitations more often than it sends them. It waits for the world to deposit its intimacies, maps, letters, recipes, seed lists, and then it tends them. The scrap suggests an arrival of more forgotten knowledge, perhaps a group of charts with marginalia, perhaps a box full of the sorts of domestic miscellany the library excels at keeping. There is a hush in the room as everyone registers the possibility. The twins press close, the two children hanging on the idea of strange charts, as if it were the beginning of a story they were allowed to make real. Lily considers the scrap, and then, because the day has begun to swell with small tasks and larger possibilities, she makes a quick decision. She writes a note in the keeper's ledger, a slim book with ruled lines in which the library records gifts, repairs, and discoveries. She turns a page, writes the date, and makes the entry. Box, found in church loft. Charts. Inspect before lending. Check condition. Possible cataloging. Her pen's nib makes a small quiet music as it scratches across the paper. Rose and Lily talk about practicalities. Who will fetch the box? How to raise it without straining a back? Whether it needs gloves or particular handling. Benique offers to help. He has the sort of hands that are steady with awkward shapes. Seamus returns, as if to confirm that the library is still the same gentle harbor it always has been. He lingers at the doorway, eyes bright. The black cat winds between their ankles, and in the midst of all of them, Lily realizes that the library is less a building than a bridge, where the town lays down its small antiquities in trust. Outside, the weather begins to clear in a complicated way. Rain becomes a fine mist that, from certain angles, looks like a soft veil. The sky takes on a deeper blue that promises a cold afternoon. The lights in the stacks, those tiny, deliberate stars, seem to gather their own brightness in response. For a long moment, Lily stands still, a woman between the stacks, feeling the weight of small histories gathered, and the ease of knowing there are hands, many hands, that will listen to them. There is a sense of arrival, and a sense of waiting both at once, and that dual feeling is part of what the Library of the Stars keeps. It is a place that honors both the immediate and the eventual, the swift thought and the patient labor. Let your shoulders soften again. Allow the scene to dissolve into the comfortable hazes of your mind. The purr of the cat, the slick of rain on the pavement, the warm lamp against cold glass. The story can hold itself on that breath. Outside, A gust of wind tugs at the door and then leaves it ajar. The room inhales the cold and then settles back to its careful temperature. Lily fetches a tea towel and presses it against the damp on the mat. She walks back to the shelf where the folio rests with Seamus's bookmark peeking like a small signpost, and she notices, for the first time tonight, that the folio's spine has a shadow where the cloth is thinner. It is, she thinks, the sign of a book that has been loved into softness. That thought comforts her in the way small certainties do, that care has been paid and that care will continue. As she moves among the stacks, cataloging and classifying small treasures, a faint, unexpected sound is audible. Someone is playing a single, clear note on a flute in the distance. It passes under the lane, then into the square where the market used to be on Saturdays, and the note folds into itself like a letter closed. The sound is spare and perfect. It gathers the room's attention without making a demand. People pause their conversation. The twins look up and follow the note with bright eyes. For a moment, the whole library listens as though sound itself were a book being read aloud. There is, in that pause, an open-reaching possibility. The box in the loft, the charts, Seamus's atlas, Benich's pamphlet, each like a tiny moon circling the day. Lily makes another note, smaller this time, for the ledger. Check attic for further donated boxes. Ring Mrs. Havers for keys. The day is gathering tasks that will spread into the week like ink on wet paper. The library is patient. It will hold all of this, and yet, for all this consideration, there are still spaces left unfilled. The conservator's kit will need replenishing. The school volunteers will require a short talk on book handling. The twins will ask whether they can make a display of their pressed leaves. The repair of Benich's pamphlet will require a calm afternoon and the precise application of the strip to hold the pages. Most of these things are small, made larger only by the fact that they belong to people and so carry their meaning. The day is a slowly unfurling map of tiny tasks. Outside, the sky begins to turn a pale pewter with the first suggestion of clearing. The footfall from the street grows louder. Someone on a hurried errand, a dog on a long lead. Lily looks at the window and, for a moment, watches as a single leaf falls and twists according to a wind that is invisible in the room. She thinks of how leaves find the earth, and how people find places to put down their stories. The Library of the Stars is one such place, and tonight, as the first vivid tasks are set, and the scrap from the church loft waits folded and slightly mysterious in a pocket, the library sits like a steady heart in the cool chest of the town. Pause here with the warmth. Feel the gentle pull of tasks yet to be finished, and let the thought of them be small and soft. The light over the table throws a circle of honey on the worktop. The kettle, having rested, hums once in a tone like a question, and outside, the world goes about its own business. Leaves shifting, doors closing, someone parking a car with a soft sigh. Inside the library, hands gather, gloves are put on. A plan is made to inspect the box from the church the next day. The shelves, those patient constellations, wait like attentive night sky, ready to receive whatever the morning may bring. Morning arrives like a soft page turned with deliberate care. The fog has come down from the hills in a low white ribbon that lifts and falls against the lane, and the Library of the Stars inhales the damp into its timbers and gives back only the faintest smell of tea and paper. Lily unlocks the attic door with gloves on her hands now, thin cotton stained at the fingertips from long work, and climbs the ladder with Bennick at her side. They move as people who have practiced handling small reliquaries. Slow, steady steps. Voices kept to the register that rooms like the library require. The attic is less a place than a memory. Rafters fretted with dust, beams that have been darkened by 100 winters, boxes stacked like patient, waiting animals. Seamus stands below, holding a lamp whose light pools on the floor in the same warm honey as the lamps in the reading room. Rose remains near the ladder with a parcel in her arms. More sleeves, perhaps, or the spool of linen she always brings when someone's binding needs joining. The black cat appears at the top of the ladder as if it had overnight become a mountaineer, and pads down without fuss to inspect the boxes with the proprietor's eye. The box from the church loft is heavier than they expected. It smells faintly of cedar and beeswax, the kind of scent that implies long storage rather than neglect. Lily sets it on the workbench and opens it carefully, the flaps whispering like pages, revealing contents wrapped in brown paper and string. The contents are a collection of charts, some printed, some hand-drawn, folded into the generous crumples of older hands. There are also envelopes, each sealed with a thumbprint of wax and a sheaf of annotations on thin paper that creaks when it is flexed. They draw the charts out one by one. Many are of constellations, their lines neat and precise. A few are star maps with unusual captions in the margins. For the night of the lanterns, moved from field to field. Do not cut this line. A folded sheet bears a child's scrawl. Larger letters, a crooked heart in the corner, and a little drawing of a night sky full of dots and a figure pointing at a bright one. Someone has once written, in small, neat script, "We watched the Perseids, and called them breadcrumbs." And the sentence sits there like a piece of domestic translation, as if the astronomer and the baker had both brought their trades into the same room. Lily finds a thin notebook at the bottom, its leather soft and depressed where a finger has rested. Inside, marginal notes take up the spaces between star names and recipes. Lists of what to plant in May, instructions for making a cordial to warm an evening, a note that reads, "If you want the stars nearer, bring a lantern with no glass." The margins are a palimpsest of domestic knowledge. Seed sowing dates, notes on linen bleaching in the sun, a tiny drawn compass showing where the wind tends to come from during harvest. Forgotten knowledge, indeed, the habits of households that read the sky as one reads the weather, that saw the stars as part of their calendar and their pantry. Benique finds, tucked beneath a chart, a small packet tied in oilcloth. Seeds. There are labels in a thin hand. Late runner beans. Silver beet. Mystery radish. Rose inhales and smiles with the surprise of someone who remembers that seeds are more intimate than recipes. They are intentions saved in husks. Lily places the packet gently into a paper envelope labeled, "To test. Do not open until spring." The act is ceremonial in a way the town would recognize, a way of promising that the past will be allowed to meet the future, but on its own timetable. There is, tucked beneath the seed packet, a scrap of brittle paper with a note in a brown ink that has bled a little at the edges. It reads, "If you find the map to the other star, don't bring it to the council. Keep it between us. We used to tell the children a story about it on winter nights." The sentence is private and smiling, and makes the assembled people look at one another the way relatives do when they remember a private joke. No one in the room knows its full story, but the presence of the instruction changes the box from a mere collection of charts into a small, secreted archive of local intimacies. They make an inventory. Lily writes each item into the ledger. Box from church loft, star charts X14, seed packet, child's notebook, packet of letters, small tin of beeswax. She draws a small star beside the note that denotes to be catalogued with local treasures. The process is quiet and ceremonial. Each object is handled with a familiarity that reads like devotion, reverence for the domestic life of the town rather than for grandeur. When they have finished, the library feels the richer for it. The charts will be cleaned, flattened, and stored in an acid-free box. The child's notebook will be scanned for preservation so the ink will not be lost to time. The seeds will be kept in a cool, dry place until the volunteers can test their viability in the community garden. Lily tucks one of the charts, the one with the note about breadcrumbs, into the folio with Seamus's bookmark, setting it so the chart peeps out like a conversation starter for whoever borrows it in future. The morning clouds begin to thin, and a pale blue edge appears. Outside, a few people wander by, wrapped in scarves, moving slower as if the weather itself obliges an unhurried pace. Children arrive for story hour with plastic boots and cheeks bright from the cold. The Library of the Stars has gathered a new set of things, objects and the plans to enliven them. It now carries the small responsibility of turning discovery into accessible memory. And that work delights Lily in a way that is almost private. Later that afternoon, when the lamps in the main room make the shelves glow like the firelight in old drawings, the library becomes a hive of gentle activity. The craft table is set out under a window that looks towards the church. Beneath the glass, indistinct as a painting, the lane moves by in soft strokes. Rose has arranged glassine paper in panes of color. Ruby, sapphire, citrine, cut into small rectangles for the children to make translucent bookmarks. She has also arranged a pot of water, a blunt pair of scissors, a jar of brass fasteners, and a box of satin ribbons in deep autumn shades. The table smells of adhesive, and the metallic tang of scissors, and the sweet, faint paper smell that comes when a sheet has just been cut. The stained glass idea is simple and apt. Children press colored paper between sheets of glassine and glue, finishing with a loop of ribbon so the light can pass through and make the pages it touches into tiny, luminous windows. They call them book stars by the time they have made 3. The twins, cheeks still sore from midday play, take to the task like ducks to a pond. Their fingers are clumsy and precise in the same breath. They tuck small pressed leaves into their bookmarks, pressing them flat with the careful concentration of young people at a task they have been told is important. Lily sits at the head of the table, showing a boy how to place his leaf so that the veins make a small constellation of their own. She tells them, softly, that once they have made their bookmarks, they might hang them in the window of stars near the biography shelf, where the light is brightest. The instruction makes heads swivel with delight. The children begin to imagine their bookmarks lighting up books, and their ideas are luminous with the kind of earnestness that folds readily into the library's long ambitions. A small mishap interrupts the calm in the kindest of ways. One of the ribbons goes missing. The girl who had chosen a soft green ribbon is crestfallen when she cannot find it. The ribbon has likely slipped behind a stack of books or fallen into someone's pocket. There is no drama, only the immediate, small distress of a child worried her work will be finished imperfectly. The twins rise as if to help, and Seamus, who has been by the maps corner, wanders round the table in his steady way. He stoops and looks into the cardboard boxes under the table and produces, as if by conjuring, a skein of spare ribbon. More than enough, ribbons of many widths and colors. He offers one to the girl with a smile that makes the problem vanish. "Thank you," the girl says, and the exchange is as simple as a handshake between old friends. The ribbon is tied, and the bookmark is finished. The child's face brightens. The whole table seems to breathe with relief. These acts, finding something lost, offering what is needed, compose the library's social fabric as much as cataloging and repairing do. They make a display, a small branch set in a jar, its twigs hung with the children's translucent bookmarks. Fairy lights are wound through the twigs so that when the lamps are turned low later, the branch will glitter like a miniature cosmos, a secret galaxy of bookmarks. The branch sits near a window with the afternoon cold pressing against it, and in the changing light the glassine panes catch the day and refract it into the room. People pause by the display, and even older patrons who usually prefer the maps and folios take a moment to watch the colors move like small boats across still water. During the crafting, an elderly woman from down the lane arrives with a tin of shortbread. She doesn't speak much, she never does. Instead, she places the tin on the table, opens it, and reveals neat, buttery rounds that smell, when uncapped, like winter kitchens and a particular kind of consolation. Someone offers 2 to the twins. Lily accepts one as well. Each bite is slow and earnest, the kind of taste that makes memory shimmer. Grandmother's hands shaping pastry, someone humming beside a stove. The shortbread seems to stitch this small community moment into the day. The children make paper stars as well, folding them with a care that soon becomes meditative. One of the children, a small girl with freckles, decides to write a message on the back of her bookmark. "For nights I cannot sleep." She pushes the ribbon through neatly and signs her name with all the solemnity that a signature deserves. Lily suggests that those bookmarks could be left in the books that mention night, sky, or comfort. "They will find the right readers," she says, and the child beams at the prospect of her work performing such a task. As afternoon eases to evening, the first snow begins. Light, tentative flakes that find the warm breath of the library windows and melt upon meeting the glass. From where they sit, the flakes look like borrowed stars falling slowly to earth. People look up and mark the change with small exclamations that are not quite surprised and more like gratitude. The fairy lights above the stacks twinkle in sympathy, and the room settles into a softer, dedicated glow. This is the point where the third vignette folds into the fourth. The community craft session has made the library more than a storehouse of things. It has turned it into a place where people leave their hands work and, in doing so, allow the past to be made present for a while. The snow outside suggests a hush. Indoors, there are cups of tea, the smell of shortbread, and a table of bookmarks that will soon be pinned to a display. Later, when the children have gone home and the chairs have been nudged back into their evening positions, Lily turns her attention to a more exacting task. The conservator's work waits in the back room. A family album with its leather spine split and a small set of brass corners tarnished with age. The album's owner had brought it in earlier that day, an elderly man who had carried it like a parcel of his life, and had left it overnight on the repair table while Lily and Rose decided on the best course. This is the part of the day that Lily loves in a particular way, where small chemistry and the patience of tools make something whole again. The task she intends to do now is the sort mapped earlier in the day's metaphors, the alchemy of mending that calls to mind kitchen recipes and winter fudge. She arranges her materials, a small pot of wheat paste, its scent faint and warm, a palette of soft brushes, a bone folder, knitted cotton cloths for blotting, a spool of linen thread. Rose sorts through the brass corners and finds one slightly bent. They will use the brass corner after the leather is cleaned and the hinge repaired. There is a small problem. The paste is lower than she thought. It is a thing that might be solved by ordering more, but ordering takes time, and this evening the repair will not wait. Lily pauses and looks around the room. The jam jar of wheat paste from the folio repair earlier gleams on the shelf. She takes both jars and mixes them together in a bowl until the paste has the right texture. Smooth, with enough body to hold but soft enough to seep into paper fibers. It smells of warm grain and something domestic. The mixing itself is quiet and pleasing, like making a simple batter. She prepares the album, opening it carefully, laying out the pages on a cushioned cradle so the spine will not be strained. The split in the leather is old and tasteful. It is the mark of years of handling, as if each hand that had turned the volume had lent some of itself to soften the cover. Lily paints a line of paste along the inner joint, lays a cotton hinge along the fold, and presses it with the bone folder until the joint kisses the paper. She works slowly, measuring each small movement by the pace of her breath. Halfway through, she notices a smudge of adhesive on the album's foredge, where a previous repairer had been less attentive. It is not a disaster. It is a small, reclaimable mistake. She moistens a cotton swab in water and gently teases the adhesive until it lifts like a seam, the paper relaxing into its original posture. It is work that requires the kind of patience most people give to knitting or to piecing a quilt. Not dramatic, but intimate. Rose reaches for the brass corner and polishes it with a tiny flannel, making it shine just enough to look like it belongs on that particular volume. The twins had earlier left a bookmark between two sections. It contains a pressed snowdrop, which no one had expected to find now. They had pocketed it during a break in their making. Lily smiles and slides the bookmark back into the album with reverence, as if the plant were a lettered relic. When the glue sets, they clamp the album in a light press, cushioning it with blotting paper. The room becomes a still life of domestic preservation. The press, the lamp, the radio murmuring distant news in a tone that is more texture than content. Outside, the first snow thickens, making the lane into a pressed marshmallow of pale light. As the album rests, Lily opens another object from the church loft box, a thin pamphlet with a stitched binding and a child's name written on the first page. Inside is a series of short, earnest notes addressed to Nellie, and full of the kind of instructions that are affectionate and quietly fantastical. If you want the stars to sing, make a paper trumpet and blow gently at midnight, for instance, or plant a bean on the longest night to catch the lantern's shadow. The marginalia between the notes is pragmatic, dates, suggested times, but the main entries are delightfully domestic and imaginative. Lily reads them aloud to Rose in a voice that folds into the lamplight. The words make both women laugh softly in the way people do when they recognize the familiar paradox of childhood, a mixture of practical invention and romantic thinking. These pages are a kind of lost ritual, a small recipe book for making ordinary magic. They are the sort of forgotten knowledge that does not promise anything weighty, only the cheap, honest joy of a tradition that says, "Do this and your evening may feel more like itself." Seamus knocks at the door and steps in with a parcel that clinks with glass. He has been to the market where, he says, he spotted a tin of special glue for bookbinders. "For leather," he declares in his usual measured tone, and Lily's face brightens at the thought. He has also brought a small piece of ribbon he thought might fit the binding. The community's tools appear as if conjured by the day's small needs. Every absence seems to be answered by someone who knows the exact shape of help. They take the album from the press when the paste has set sufficiently. The hinge holds, and the leather looks like a healed joint rather than a scar. Lily fits the brass corner, and the album's spine breathes as though it had been asleep and now wakes to find the world unchanged but available. They sign the repair note in the ledger. Album repaired. Brass corner added. Wheat paste mixed. The act is small and precise and finishes the day's labors with the quiet satisfaction of a meal finished and the dishes washed. As evening deepens and the snow turns the lane into a hush, patrons gather at the doorway to take home their day's small inheritances. Benique collects his pamphlet. Rose wraps some sleeves for a regular who had phoned to ask if the library could lend a volume to be read at a bedside. The twins wave their bookmarks like flags. The elderly woman with shortbread takes a last piece and promises to leave the tin at the front desk on her way out. So, anyone who might like a little something can have it. Seamus tucks the tin into his coat and heads into the night like a man on a pleasant errand. Lily moves through the room like someone straightening a bed before sleep. She checks that the fairy lights are secure, tucks away small scraps into their envelopes, turns off the brighter lamps, and leaves the reading lamps glowing as small candles. The stacks are a galaxy again. Spines leaning like planets and titles shining under the soft points of light. Before she locks up, she pauses at the display by the biography shelf, where the children's bookmarks hang like jewels. The snow outside makes the world look as though someone has dusted it in powdered sugar. The fairy lights above the stacks twinkle in counterpoint, and Lily realizes that the library is a map of both care and invention. It shelters recipes and star charts, seedlings and shortbread, and in doing so, it keeps the town's small rituals alive. There is a final small ritual that she performs. She takes the folio, now with Seamus's bookmark and the church chart tucked into it, and sets it carefully in its place on the shelf. She smooths her palm along the spine and leaves a little note in the ledger. Folio. New chart included. Consider display with window of stars next week. The note is brief and practical. It closes the day's circle. She walks to the front door and turns the brass key so the lock clicks the way it always has. Before she leaves, she looks back to the warm lights inside and allows herself a private, slightly indulgent pleasure in the scene. The lamp glow on the workbench, the constellation of bookmarks, the press with its resting album, the shelf that holds the folio like an old friend. The library stands ready to keep whatever the night might need it to keep. As you listen now, let your breath find the same steady cadences the room has kept all evening. If you would, feel your shoulders loosen a touch more. Let each exhale be a little lighter than the one before. Imagine the fairy lights as tiny stars arranged above your own thoughts, giving them gentle attention rather than interruption. Picture Lily's hand on the folio's spine, and the small satisfaction of an object returned to its place. Picture the children's bookmarks swinging softly in the lamplight like promises. Outside, the snow continues to fall with a sound that is almost nothing at all. Just the softest shushing that nature makes when it wants the world to listen. Inside, the library of the stars breathes in and out, a measured keeper of small domestic magics. There are more boxes to be catalogued, more sleeves to be found, more shortbread to be shared in the weeks to come. These are not urgent things, but rather a slow choreography of care. This is how communities tend their ordinary histories. Lily crosses the room for the last time and straightens a chair cushion by the window. The cat has already remade itself into a warm knot upon a pile of returned novels, and surveys the room with sleepy approval. She lifts the lamp a fraction, so the light spills a little further across the desk and casts softer shadows along the spines. There is no need to rush. The library will wait. The books will wait. The people who need its comforts will come in their own time. When the door shuts, the world outside is blown white by the weather and muffled into a softer tune. The library's lights appear through the windows like a little galaxy pinned to the lane. Lily walks home with bundles strapped against her chest. Recycled sleeves, a list of repairs, and the quiet feeling of an evening's labor well done. She will return tomorrow, and there will be new discoveries and small dramas, and the same patient heartbeat of caretaking. For now, the town is lined in snow, and the library's windows glow like constellations set down on earth. Allow your eyelids to feel the weight of that quiet. Little, soft, and welcome. Let your breath fall into its natural rhythm, and imagine one last thing. The folio on the shelf, its bookmark peeping like a lighthouse. The stained glass bookmarks humming gently when the lamp catches them. Picture the fairy lights slowly dimming over the stacks until each feels like a single private star. There is no need to follow every thought to its end. The library does not hurry its knowledge away. It keeps things a while so that the world can find them again. If tonight's quiet visit in the Library of the Stars warmed you, consider coming back for another gentle evening here. A soft invitation, that is all, so the hush can remain intact. Now, let the images fold themselves into the dark. The lamp's honeyed circle, a child's pressed leaf between two pages, a chart with the note about breadcrumb stars, a tin of shortbread cooling on the windowsill. Let each picture be a small, steady thing that anchors your breath. Allow the sound of the rain-turned snow to move through the lane beyond, and let your shoulders release a little more. When you are ready, let your thoughts settle like bookmarks placed with care. The Library of the Stars stands waiting still outside time, a place where forgotten knowledges are kept not as curiosities, but as the gentle scaffolding of ordinary life. Rest, if you will, in that company. Close the page of whatever busy day you have carried, and consider this night a small, intentional pause. Good night from the quiet room of lamps and spines. Good night to the little constellations pinned above the shelves. Sleep, if it comes, is welcome, and if it does not tonight, there will be another evening like this, another lamp to turn on, another folio to open, another tin of shortbread to share. Until then, rest in the hush. If this evening in the Library of the Stars felt like comfort you might return to, you will find more of these slow visits on the channel. Gentle stories and soft rooms kept just for evenings such as this.